Welcome to the St Martin's Challenge podcast, where we give a voice to the most vulnerable in our society. Hosted by me, Owens.
And me, Savraj Kaur.
Okay, welcome everyone. Delighted to welcome Philip Selway, drummer from Radiohead and a very strong supporter of the Samaritans. Philip, great to have you on. Thanks ever so much.
Thanks for having me, Lewis.
It's a pleasure. Now, Philip, as much as I would like to ask you numerous questions about Radiohead, let's talk about the Samaritans, because I know it's incredibly important to you. Tell us a little bit about how you first got involved and why you got involved.
So my involvement with Samaritans goes back almost 30 years now. It was a time when I'd just gone off to do my degree up in Liverpool. I was a fresher, and they were sending around all the kind of fresher packs and telling you all about kind of different organisations. And one of them caught my eye, which was Nightline, which is the student version of Samaritans. And up in Liverpool, they at the time they worked together. So they were kind of, so in this bookmark that they gave, they were just kind of listing the kind of I don't know, traits that they were looking for in potential volunteers, and something about that, you know, it struck a chord with me at the time. It's not something I'd ever thought about, but I felt that actually kind of spoke to something in me, you know, that ability to listen and to give people space and to be able to come into a conversation, kind of leaving yourself out of it, not bringing your judgments into it. And so, that kind of led me to applying to become a volunteer for Nightline. And because of that, became a volunteer for Samaritans. And it became something that was, and has been, a very central part of my adult life. I was a Samaritan up in Liverpool, and then I was a Samaritan back in my hometown in Oxford. And overall, it was probably about 20 years of being a listening volunteer. And then I became involved in a different capacity with Samaritans, I was an ambassador for some time as well. And it's just been there as an organisation very close to my heart, and has always been there kind of more in the background for me over this past decade or so. But it is an organisation that is still incredibly important to me.
They're wonderful. They really are. And some of the stories that you hear coming out of the services that they offer are very, very moving. And I think sometimes we struggle to reach out, don't we? And we struggle not only to open up, but also to listen. There's an art to listening, isn't there, Philip? And it's not always easy to do, is it?
No, it's something we're not really equipped with, you know, and generally the pace of life is such that actually we don't stop to listen, I think. And I think one thing that I got from my Samaritans training was really kind of honing those it's a life skill. And it's something that you wish, actually it would be marvelous that everybody has the opportunity to almost go through that Samaritan training and really develop those listening skills. And I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could become a country of listeners?
Wouldn't it be great? And I know that Sav's going to ask you more about the training in due course, but let's talk a little bit about the book that's come out, which has been edited by Katie Columbus, How to Listen, Tools for Opening Up Conversations When It Matters Most. It's a wonderful book, isn't it, Philip? It's something that you've contributed to, which we'll talk about. But it's a manual, a self-help book. There's testimonies from volunteers. How did the book come about?
Well, the stage that I became involved in it, I think Katie Columbus was already quite a way down the line with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that she described it to me at the time was that actually being able to take those skills, which you kind of really, really hone and develop at Samaritans, to be a Samaritan, you don't need to be an expert in any particular field, but you need to come to it with that openness and willingness to open up to people, to be still with people, to give people the space to examine their own feelings. And I think through the book, it was to actually kind of boil down all that experience of many years of Samaritans training and just all those conversations that they've had over the years, and to actually kind of pull it all into one spot so that anybody can access that, and so that you can actually bring that into your everyday conversations, into your relationships. And from that, that's it's such a wonderful place to then build up much more caring, aware relationships with your family, with your friends, with colleagues. And so I think what Katie has done there is to pull all this, from Samaritan volunteers, from kind of the Samaritan training approach, to pull it all into this one place, which in itself, it feels like a bit of a refuge in itself, reading the book. You feel cared for, you feel nurtured in it, but it's very accessible advice that's in there. And it's kind of, it's setting out the principles of the Samaritan approach, and so that you can take that, as I say, into your everyday life.
It does sound like a book that we all need to read. And I agree, there is a role for all of us as adults to play in listening authentically, lovingly, and just being that open human connection, let alone to prevent someone doing something that they might not be able to come back from. Can you tell me a little bit about what they teach you on a typical Samaritans training program? Maybe give us your key tips so that we can become that nation of listeners.
Yeah, I think they're kind of what I took away from the training in terms of actually how you can find your way through a conversation and open up a conversation and make it a comfortable place for somebody to open up to you and build up that trust. I think it's they're kind of 6 key things. They kind of refer to it as the Samaritan, the listening wheel, if you like. And it's one thing is asking open questions, questions that don't elicit a monosyllabic answer. So you're asking things, like how, what, where, when, how were you feeling at that point? What were you doing at that point? So you kind of, you're allowing people to open up. And I think in a lot of instances in our kind of everyday conversations, we can come back with just a yes or no answer. And we find we're very effective at closing down conversations, and actually asking, giving that space for people to explore their own feelings, through those open questions. I think that's a very good place to start. I think I know when I feel that I've been listened to, I feel it's almost like you feel validated, and you feel as though you've been held in that moment. And I think another thing that I've picked up from the training was a very good way of reflecting back to somebody that you are listening to them, is kind of summarizing what somebody's saying to you as you're going along, so telling me that you felt like that, is that right? It gives a chance to somebody to say, okay, you are listening to me. And actually, if that's not actually what they kind of meant at the time, it gives you a chance to really clarify what somebody's talking about. But it builds up that trust. Part of that is it's kind of reflecting back certain phrases, picking up. So if you, I was feeling angry, so you were feeling angry. It shows that you're listening. I think also that sense of connection, it comes from, it's kind of like using short words of encouragement as well, rather than, you want to keep yourself out of the conversation, but saying, yes, just showing that you are still engaged with that conversation. And I think that kind of, and then the other thing would be reacting, saying something like, that sounds difficult for you, that situation sounds difficult for you. Acknowledging people's situation. As I say, again, it's all part of that validation, feeling so you're being heard, that you're being validated.
So that's amazing, and I agree, everyone should have those skills, but there's listening, and then there's also being able to reach out. And I know that there's been a campaign to encourage more men to reach out when they're unable to cope, or they feel like there's no one to talk to. And I know this is even more true for Asian and Black men for a range of reasons. What can you tell me about the campaign that encourages more men to seek help?
I've not been involved specifically in that campaign, but I mean, talking from my own experience, I guess, I know when I was going through school, I went to an all boys school, and it was something that I wasn't encouraged to do, to talk about my feelings, to open up about feelings. I mean, I think the kind of ideal that was held up for you was that you would be super strong, super self-contained, and actually, I think for me, that's what kind of really chimed with when I saw the leaflet for Nightline and Samaritans up in Liverpool all those years ago. It's just like, okay, there is another way of being, and it's something that a lot of men do carry through into their working life, through into their adult relationships, and it's a very isolating way to be. So it is, and it's interesting, Philip, because there's been a theme that's been running through these podcasts that we've been doing right from the first one we did, and it's been about sometimes the difficulty to reach out, to look after our mental health. It's very hard to do sometimes. What about yourself? How do you look after yourself? Because you've got an incredibly busy schedule. You're either recording or you're touring. How do you switch off? How do you
how do you make sure that you keep your equilibrium?
I mean, I've got good people around me. I've got I have people around me that I feel I can open up to. My wife. I've got a couple of friends that I will open up to. I find actually, and it's taken me to being in my 50s to actually find that that ability to say, actually, no, I need a life out of work, and actually, when there are kind of specific problems, issues which I don't think I'm dealing with. Actually, it's something that you can kind of just push to the back of your mind. You can, but it's still there. They're still there to trip you up.
Yeah.
And those have been the points in my life where I've sought actual professional help. Going to a counsellor, which is not a comfortable thing to do initially. You know, it's a big. It feels like a big step when you're doing it. It feels like a leap of faith. But actually, when I've done that, it has been such an incredibly affirming experience doing it. And then actually feeling that I'm taking control over aspects of myself, which I felt had been freewheeling at points.
Yeah.
That's been a great thing. And actually, I mean, kind of selfishly speaking, from my involvement with Samaritans as well over the years, I mean, there's the bit that I've, you know, it's allowed me to feel as though I've been hopefully useful to people, but also you benefit as a volunteer from that contact with the callers, with the other volunteers as well. I mean, you're there building with kind of like the best listeners that you've ever come across, and the most supportive kind of group of people that you can ever be in. And I think that has done so much for my sense of well-being as an adult. And I guess for me as well, kind of, it's been quite a contrast to what I've done in my working life. And actually, that has been a real lifeline to me at points, to have something that is just so far removed from that everyday thing of being in a band.
Yeah, I mean, it's so great that you feel that you take away something as well. It's not just about giving, and there's so many volunteers, and I just wanted to thank you and everyone else who takes the time. You don't have to do it to be there for others. Lewis doesn't actually know this, but my own mother took her own life when I was just 8 years old. So on behalf of like families who've been impacted by people with mental health issues, you will never know how much of a huge impact you're making out there. But I believe it's huge, and huge for not just them, but their loved ones, friends, everyone.
Yeah.
So thank you.
But it always feels like a real privilege when you're on the phone in a Samaritan call, because you have somebody there who is letting you into the kind of the most intimate, vulnerable parts of their lives, and they do that with trust, and just take away from that just how privileged a position that is to be in somebody's life. Even with a complete stranger. Sometimes it can be easier with a complete stranger, I guess.
It's the most remarkable thing. Sav, thank you for sharing that. I just want to read something that Katie sent to me earlier, Philip. It's got some very useful information for anyone who may be listening. Samaritans is busy 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and this hasn't changed during the pandemic. Our volunteers have provided emotional support over 1.7 million times since social distancing restrictions began in March 2020. Our volunteers have been hearing from people feeling concerned about isolation, unemployment, mental health, and illness, among other things. Now more than ever, it is essential that we look after our own mental health and others by continuing to check in on each other and sharing how we are feeling, whether it's with a friend, family member, or a confidential helpline like Samaritans. Our volunteers are always there to listen, and they won't judge or tell you what to do. Call for free on 116 123 or email Joe, that's J-O, at samaritans.org, or visit samaritans.org. Some very useful information there. And I would just like to again mention the book, How to Listen, Tools for Opening Up Conversations When It Matters Most. Just encourage people to buy it, to share it, because the message it contains is incredibly important. And I just want to echo what Sav said, Philip. It would be very easy for someone like you to have their own life in work and forget about it. But I think the fact that you come on and you speak so openly about it is such a testament to you as a person. And I know that you have helped so many people just by having the strength to do what you do. And as Sav said, we can only thank you and all the other many volunteers for the Samaritans that do a wonderful job, and our admiration and utmost respect to you all. So Philip Selway, thanks ever so much for coming on, and just if you've got any final words you'd like to say.
Well, thank you to you both, and thank you to everybody who listens to this podcast. As I say, I can't encourage anybody enough to reach out to people close to you and just open up that conversation and allow people around you to feel held in that moment and feel held in that care, really.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Philip, again, thanks ever so much for coming on.
Thank you, Lewis. Thanks, Sav.